Hey, friends. There's been so much going on in this space for the last few weeks. And while you may have seen our words, you haven't had a chance to hear our voices. So Jessica and I wanted to do a video to answer questions that we know are floating around in the space and give you an idea of what's in the works. Here's the quick structure of this video. We'll introduce ourselves for those of you who don't know us and how we ended up in this pseudo-leadership position we find ourselves in. We'll give you some general thoughts on the current situation and how our community got here. Talk about what we believe it will take to get us back to a vibrant community where everyone can feel safe to participate fully. And we'll talk about the steps we've laid out to push the process of accountability forward, including introducing an incredible facilitator, updating you on the story collection process and future steps. And to be completely transparent, in order to keep ourselves concise and on track, we've scripted this and are reading. So if we're not fully natural, that's why.
Thanks, Leah. Well, let's get started with introductions. My name is Jessica Morgenthaler. I grew up here in Portland, and I've been a member of the sex positive community since 2016. I've been in the medical field for 15 years, and I have been a well coach for 6. I am currently attending graduate school at Portland State University to get my master's in social work, and my focus is on complex trauma. I've supported the sex positive community, ethical non-monogamy community, and the queer community for years, hosting socials, teaching healthy relationship skills, and providing guidance on conflict resolution.
Thanks, Jessica. And I'm Leah Carey. I've been in the Portland sex positive community since late 2017. Some of you may know me as the host of the podcast, Good Girls Talk About Sex, and I'm also a sex and intimacy coach. I spend a lot of time every week talking with people about the ways that consent violations and coercive behavior show up in relationships and how they affect people's nervous systems and ability to communicate and respond meaningfully. I'm also one of the people who has shared a consent violation that I experienced with Cliff. So I want to be really clear. I am not out for blood, and my goal is not the destruction of EP. My fondest hope is that Cliff will fully engage in a process of restorative justice so that he can return to the community in a way that allows his many gifts to be used in a safe way. I also recognize that as the owner of a for-profit business, Cliff has a right to run his business as he sees fit. So while I want to support his efforts in amends, I also want to keep my focus on people who have experienced harm and support them toward feeling whole. Jessica and I have not been hired or elected by the community to take on a leadership role in this situation. Instead, in the early days of February, people saw how each of us were handling the Facebook conversations going on and encouraged us to become more involved. And in fact, prior to this month, we didn't even know each other, but now we are fast friends. Since February 1st, we have been deeply involved in research, seeking guidance from others who've been through similar processes in other communities, and imagining what a path forward can look like for our community. We've tapped our various networks, Jessica's in social work and restorative justice, and mine in the sex educator field, where similar breaches have been addressed in the past, including names you've probably been hearing, Reid Mihalko and Charlie Glickman. As two people interested in social justice and healing within sex-positive communities, our goal is to help the EP community heal. And we also have a bigger vision of creating a process that can be used as a model by others in the future. Toward that goal, we are moving forward deliberately and consistently double-checking ourselves. The unintended consequence of that is that it may look like nothing is happening or that things are moving at a snail's pace. But we promise there's a lot happening.
Now, to get back to you, the EP community. First, we hold deep, deep gratitude for everybody who has been engaged in the conversation over the last month. Regardless of how you feel about Cliff's behavior and the reports that have been made, this community is important to all of us. The next few months will be an investment in returning empowered pleasure to a vibrant community where everyone feels safe to participate fully. Situations like this can tear groups apart because everyone sees what's happening through their own particular lens. And that lens is informed with their own history, their own personal experiences, and their own identities. Because everyone's past hurts and traumas are different, it triggers different things in each of us. And that's why it can look like we are on different sides of the issue. So I wanted to address some of the fears that we've seen pop up in the discussion so far. So to the men who are now afraid that EP is going to be an unsafe space where you're constantly in danger of being called out, our goal is actually the exact opposite. We want to create a space where everyone can feel safe to show up as themselves. And that means not the perfect self, right? And part of how we accomplish that is by making sure that everyone has a deeper understanding of what it means to move through the space with trauma-informed consent and what that looks like. Because as much as we'd wish it to be different, an overwhelming portion of our community, people of all identities, they're dealing with trauma around their bodies and their sexuality. We just want everyone to have the tools to navigate these issues safely so that you can trust in the fun that you're having. To the people who are scared of losing your community, we hear you. Leah and I are both members of this community, and we've also found our home here and have connections with many of you. So we don't want that either. And that's why we're putting so much effort into figuring out a way forward that honors everybody and keeps the community safe. For those who have experienced harm, we see you, we hear you, and we believe you. All of our efforts are in service to helping you get the repair that you need and is going to be most meaningful to you. And finally, to everyone, this is flippin' hard. Like, none of us want this to be the case, and here we are. And so we believe wholeheartedly that if we participate in this restorative justice process, it can and will make our community stronger. So, to the best of your ability, we just ask you to hold space for the fact that everyone's experiences are true and valid. Please hold each other, regardless of where you stand on the issues, with love and compassion, because it is hard for all of us.
You also want to acknowledge one thing that may feel like showing love and compassion to everyone, but is actually doing further harm to survivors. When you show up in the space of sending light and love to everyone on all sides and not having an opinion, you're essentially saying that you're willing to sit by and let harm continue as long as it doesn't affect you. We understand it's probably not at all what you mean, but this is how it sounds to a survivor. In other words, a position of neutrality is actually a statement, and it's a statement against the survivors. So if you're unsure of how to support the survivors, here are some recommendations. Pay attention to the commitments that are being made, and then watch to see if they're being followed through on with action. Words are the first step, but consistent behavior is the true measure of change. To avoid putting additional emotional labor on the survivors, there are going to be opportunities for you to volunteer, and we'll talk about that more next week. Cliff is going to need support from all of us in this new space of growth, but the center of focus should always be on the survivors. It can be comforting to cheer Cliff on, but the best way to support him is to listen to the survivors and confirm that their needs are being taken care of throughout this process. Again, his actions towards survivors will be one of the most important benchmarks of growth. And if you're intimately involved with a survivor or with Cliff, your primary focus should be emotional support to your partner. We know you may want to jump in with both feet to the restorative process, but the truth is that in order to be the steady source of support your partner needs, you need to take care of your own mental and emotional health. This is a lot for all of us, and your partner needs you to hold them right now.
I want to take a minute to do a quick dive on the history of empowered pleasure, because I think it informs how we got here and why there seems to be such a wide divergence of viewpoints on the current situation. Our understanding is that one of the base assumptions when sex positive Portland, SPP, and EP split was that SPP would provide education for levels 1 and 2, so that everybody had a baseline understanding of boundaries and consent that was trauma informed. At that point, people could enter EP into the same level they had at SPP. An L3 person at SPP, for example, could enter into EP as an E3. As we understand it, the initial goal of EP was primarily to provide level 2, 3, and 4 events. Well, that plan was hijacked by the pandemic, and what ended up happening was that SPP had to pause their classes and events, and that left EP without an avenue for potential members to be educated appropriately. EP didn't have a baked-in education structure to support the number of new people they received during the pandemic. They quickly developed some classes, but core education classes were never a central part of EP's mission. The result is that newbies didn't have the level of education around boundaries and consent that was needed to safely participate in level 3 and 4 events. That had an impact on the culture of EP, leaving everyone vulnerable to potential harm. In addition to that, it was amplified by the fact that EP leadership was also lacking in those areas. As Cliff had said, he spent much of his life expecting that a yes would always remain a yes, no matter how it came to be. We recognize that this isn't just a Cliff issue, but because of the way that he built the community, it is a community issue. And as head of this community, Cliff has set a standard of behavior. While his words may have been saying the right things, his actions were not. So now that we've identified this issue, here's what we've been working on so far.
So after much searching, we've found a facilitator to support the survivors who is local and experienced in restorative justice. Their name is Marita De Leon, using they, them pronouns. And we've had a couple of meetings with them, and they are, if we may say, completely friggin' kick ass. We are currently finalizing an agreement with them for what their scope of work will be. And that includes making sure we move through this restorative justice process ethically and without doing further harm, having a meet and greet with the whole community in the next couple of weeks so you can meet them and ask questions, receiving stories from survivors and compiling a list of themes and harms, assisting survivors with repair and restoration as appropriate, and communicating with Cliff's facilitator as appropriate. Our first order of business has been to create the survey that will finally allow the community to offer any stories of harm they may be holding. We've based this survey on the one used by both Reed Mihalko and Charlie Glickman. But the survey is not just for survivors. It's for everyone. We want to know what's important to you as a community. what values you believe EP should represent, and how you'd like to see us move forward. There'll be an opportunity for allies to offer support and for those who have witnessed harm to share what they know as well. Marita is currently doing a final review of the survey before we release it to you to fill out. We plan to open it on March 3rd and hope that every member of EP will respond. We've asked Cliff to provide us the full list of EP email addresses so we can notify the entire community when it's available. In the coming weeks, we'll be making recommendations about types of education that should be instituted by EP, recommendations for community action, and recommendations for action specifically from Cliff.
Thank you. So, what now? Next week, we're planning on releasing another video that will include a video from Marita with an introduction to who they are and what they plan to do. We also will take a look at what restorative justice looks like in this context now that Cliff has agreed to participate. And we'll be communicating with you both about the RJ process and the outcomes of the survey. So we're looking forward to Cliff's town hall on March 10th. We hope that everybody comes. But in the meantime, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your engagement. And if you do have any comments, questions, or concerns, please feel free to DM me through Facebook, and then we can talk from there. So we are here to support you, and we just want you to know that. And all of you, not just the survivors. So thank you again for watching this if you've gotten this far, and we hope that you have a great week, and we will talk to you again soon.
Take care.